Our good friend Haley Hernandez is with us. So nearly 800,000 people in this country suffer a stroke every year. That's from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And Haley's here to talk about the fact that a lot of people don't know the symptoms, the signs that they're having or someone they know is having a stroke.
Yeah, they don't know the signs. And listen to this fact, about 1 in 3 victims never even called 911. Wow. This month is Stroke Awareness Month. So this morning, we really want to dive into understanding the signs that you're having a stroke and just simply to raise awareness. Joining me now is Dr. Persse, the City of Houston Health Authority. Good morning, Dr. Persse.
Good morning, Haley. Thanks for having me back.
So some people might be familiar with an acronym FAST, and now we see the acronym Be Fast. Can you tell us what does that stand for? What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so the FAST is the acronym that, first of all, the F stands for face. So a lot of times when people are having acute strokes, there will be a change in their ability to control their facial muscles. So most people smile, and it's the same on each side. If one side doesn't go up, then that's one thing to look for as a possible stroke. Also, the A stands for arms. Now, it's not just that you can't raise your arm, but even the loss of grip strength could be a sign that somebody's having a stroke. And S is speech. So speech impediments, people slurring their words, or sometimes it's just people, the words don't make sense. So they can speak just fine, but the words coming out don't make sense, or there's long pauses as they search for a very common word. So inability to speak properly. And then the T stands for time, is where it's be fast, not just the fast, you gotta be fast. Because as you point out, a lot of folks will delay. In fact, we find that some people having strokes, in fact, many people having strokes, will wait a whole hour before they call 911 or seek help. And the problem with that is we've only got a few hours to treat somebody if we want to reverse the stroke. And we can do that now with certain medications. We can actually reverse the stroke, stop it. But it's got to be done in those first couple of hours. So every minute wasted is a minute lost.
Can you clarify, does somebody recognize these symptoms in themselves, or does it take somebody looking at them to recognize the symptoms?
Well, like I said, nobody wants to have a stroke. And so very often the person having the stroke will go into denial and pretend that it's something else that's causing their inability to speak, or their inability to use their arm, or their inability to walk. It's a denial. And so a lot of times it's their person who's with them, a spouse, another family member, a good friend, or sometimes just a bystander, has to recognize that something has dramatically changed. And so it can be the patient. They a lot of times don't want to know this, or it's going to be the other person who's going to step up and say, listen, you're having a serious problem. I'm calling 911.
And that's the delay with people calling 911 a lot of times, is that the denial gets in the way of calling too.
That's right.
Yeah. So what are some of the most common risk factors for having a stroke?
So anything which will damage your blood vessels. And so these are things which occur over lifetime. So cigarette smoking, if you're diabetic, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and unfortunately also some of your own genetics. So if you've got a family history of people having heart or stroke problems, you need to pay extra special attention. Now, the thing is, with a lot of these risk factors, you do have control over them, right? So you can choose not to smoke, or you can get help stopping smoking. If you're diabetic, you need to be really diligent about controlling your sugar levels. Also, exercise. If you exercise a lot, aerobic or not, you just get out and exercise. And I don't mean marathon running. I mean just walking 30 minutes a day is helpful. But these are all things which will reduce your stroke level, and they are really important because they really, really make a difference. And the other thing I want to point out is that here in Houston, we're really lucky. Across the nation, more people are having acute strokes, per capita, get treated here in Houston. We have very aggressive stroke programs at our local hospitals. In fact, Houston was the first city in the United States to have a mobile stroke ambulance with a CT scanner right on the ambulance. And so, if you're going to have a stroke anywhere, you probably want to have it here in Houston. But even here, you still need to recognize the signs and symptoms and call early in order for us to be able to reverse that stroke for you.
Yes, Dr. Persse, you're so right. And I'm a big fan of that mobile stroke unit. I just hope that we can eventually see it all over the city and all over the nation, really. More places need to have that. Can you explain some of the complications that would happen, though, if you don't get to a hospital in time, if you don't recognize that these are signs of a stroke? What could then happen to you?
Well, the brain is a very complicated organ, right? And once the damage is done, If you have a small stroke, sometimes the brain around it can make up for it, but larger strokes, the brain can't make up that difference. So people can wind up with permanent paralysis. And then when that happens, then the muscles will contract. People can wind up with permanent breathing problems. They can wind up with permanent problems just thinking straight. They can wind up with permanent problems speaking. And these are all things that we need just day to day. Just the quality of your life is dependent on your ability to think clearly, communicate with others, and to move around to the best of your ability. And you can lose that with a stroke. But again, if you recognize the symptoms early and you call, there's a good chance we're going to be able to minimize, if not eliminate, your stroke.
Dr. Persse, this was all really helpful information, and based on the risk factors that you mentioned earlier, it sounds like a lot of people in America could be at risk for a stroke. So we really appreciate you breaking that down for us and helping us to understand that shouldn't delay calling 911 is one of the most important things, but understanding the symptoms as well. I appreciate your time this morning.
Thanks, Haley. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, just a personal note too. I mean, I had suffered personally stroke-like symptoms in the last few months, and
my goodness.
Timing, because we hadn't had a chance to talk about
this is the first time hearing about this.
I just want to follow up on what the doctor was saying, because the timing is so important. They looked at me at Methodist Hospital. God bless Methodist Hospital. They're fantastic. And they said, well, look, if we wait to figure out if you're having a stroke, it's going to be too late to give you the clot-busting medication.
Yeah.
So we had to decide on the spot. We don't know if you're having a stroke, but should we give you this medication?
Was there any harm in giving the medication?
There's potential for internal bleeding. There was some of that, but they looked at my wrist and they said, yeah, you're here anyway, so we keep you for observation for 24 hours. It's expensive, but let's just do it to protect you.
Yeah.
So again, time is of now.
And then
clean bill of health
thank God
right now,
you're
thankfully.
somebody who has insurance and who has
right.
the, ability to go to the hospital. That's also another problem for a lot of people, is that they just don't even have that as an option.
In terms of those risk factors they spoke of, afibrillation is another one, because in between those arrhythmic heartbeats, clots can form, strokes can happen, and that's one of the things I learned from this experience.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So luckily I don't have AFib, and luckily it all
But it is
together,
another thing that's super common, which is making a lot of people at risk of a stroke, and they don't even think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So one other note of this, because
that.
FAST and Be Fast, those acronyms are really interesting and clever if you speak English. But for
Right.
Spanish speakers, it's been harder to get the message out.
Yeah, so this is important because Hispanic people living in the United States have a high risk of dying from a stroke. So UT Health Houston has created an acronym, Rapido. Here's the acronym on your screen right now. It includes the 5 most common symptoms of a stroke, and it includes the message to act quickly by contacting emergency services. This is all in Spanish, so send it to los padres or abuelitos. It's a little longer than the FAST acronym that is in English, but it's a good option as far as Spanish speakers go. Best we have so far.